I was looking at different books on citizenship. And so I wrote down a page of my own thoughts, and I'd like to read it because I really want to get across the thoughts that I had, and I'm not sure I could remember them. So this is what I wrote. I have a need to look again, an educated look at the Constitution and what it represents in today's America. Our founding fathers, the framers of the Constitution, created a profoundly visionary document. And at the same time, it was historically flawed, in my opinion. Since the 1700s, we, the people, have had the Constitution reshaped. We, the people, have had the Constitution reshaped by 27 amendments, a civil war, and a tremendous social transformation in the early 1900s, and again in the 1960s and 70s. These transformations helped to attain the system of the constitutional government which we have today, with its respect for individual freedoms and human rights that we hold fundamental truths, that we hold as the fundamental truths here in 2022. The big question today is, who are we the people? And what is our responsibility to understand, embrace, and improve our constitutional history? We Americans are a tremendously divided group of people. Why did and do people come to America? Maybe the answer is freedom to be seen and respected for who they are as individuals, and that is a core need for all human beings. Maybe freedom to experience basic human rights as well as basic human needs for security. That might play a part why people come to the United States. For whatever reason, we all originally came from different shores, and our diversity has been the center of the making of America. Gloria Steinem in the 70s said, and it seems relevant today, we need a revolution from within, a revolution from within ourselves as American citizens, a revolution to finally acknowledge and embrace the idea that we Americans come from everywhere, a revolution to stop denying our one nation, our United States, is a monoculture. We, the people, can transform ourselves and our society by acknowledging our sameness and our sacredness as human beings, because we all have a common origin. And also, I'd like to read a little legend from Black Elk. So Black Elk of the Sioux saw in a sacred manner the shapes of all things in the spirit, and the shapes of all things as they must live together like one being. And he saw that the sacred hoop of the people was one of many hoops that made one circle, wide as daylight and as starlight. And in the center grew a mighty, towering, flowering tree to shelter all the children of our one mother and one father. Today we need to stop denying our wholeness as members of humanity, as well as members of this nation. And Black Elk's thought about being our wholeness as members of one nation, I think is the change, one of the changes that we need to transform ourselves so that we can include everybody in the United States and embrace everybody in the United States. And that's my true thought and my and what I've been trying to live my whole life.
Wow, thanks, Karen. You spoke exactly to something that struck me recently when I volunteered to attend a naturalization ceremony at which citizens from 45 different countries took the oath of allegiance to the United States. And really, that is a perfect demonstration of how many shores people come from and how many other nations they come from just to our city and region. I was prompted to consider some questions after I heard the oath that these folks stood and took. Because the oath, and I'll read just a bit of it, the oath is very focused on particular allegiance to this country, renouncing allegiance to the countries from which they came, and protecting the United States Constitution and laws, mainly by legally defending, either through military or non-combatant services. And I was a little dismayed and my mind piqued by that because I thought, well, I never took that exact oath. I was born here. And how would I feel about it? And so I proceeded to write about it and to come up with some questions that I wanted to have answered, which we're going to try to address some of in this conversation. Should I go ahead, Matt, with the first question, or do you want to put your part in now?
Nope, I think now is a good time to go to the first question.
Okay. Well, one of the questions that came up in my mind was, if I had been born into another country or culture, how would I feel about entirely renouncing it in order to join a new one? It also brought to mind the fact that some people have dual citizenship. And it brought to my mind the fact that a friend of ours in Bold New Democracy, who's with us tonight, is a naturalized citizen from Poland. And so I thought we could ask her to speak to the oath and how she looks at being a citizen of this country.
Hi. I indeed came here from Poland. My ceremony took place in Boston in 1982 in Faneuil Hall. I was there along with 400 other applicants. It was a big ceremony. I had left Poland 6 years earlier during some of its darkest post-Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia days, when there seemed to be no hope for any change nor inkling of any change coming. And what I left behind was what I have been calling a world of make-believe. A world of not of our own choosing either, where basically our everyday reality was belied by economic, political, ideological communist propaganda. And I found a little entry in my diary thinking about the subject. And indeed, I wrote there, communist Poland was a make-believe country where people spend their life trying not to see or hear or speak. And you do not form a strong attachment to a country like that. The real Poland, still in my diary, the real Poland exists only in people's memory. And even those memories had to be shared cautiously. So your parents or friends wouldn't wind up in jail or in exile. Now these memories were what was precious, what constituted the real fabric of history and culture of Poland. And that was the part that is not possible to renounce. I don't think anybody can honestly say that that's something they can leave behind. What I renounced with relief was, once again, the communist world of make-believe. There was freedom in it, and the fact that I was choosing my new country, choosing my new culture, was extremely freeing and empowering. Now, I knew some of what I was coming to. I knew some history, I knew some literature. I was very impressed by the civil rights movement, the anti-Vietnam War movement, and what trickled, into the communist Poland at the time. Anyway, I remember a friend of ours somehow got hold of the Bill of Rights when I was a student in college, and we passed it, among friends, and it practically, made us cry when we read that. So, once again, for me, renouncing that unreal mess of the communist world was easy. Renouncing the culture, the history, the memories, not possible. And I will add too that in my case, dual citizenship was not possible. I did not even inquire if it was feasible, but I knew that if I wanted to go back and visit my family, I could only try doing that as an American citizen, because otherwise I could have been arrested. So that's hopefully something that you find interesting and enlightening.
That's an amazing story, Marta. And it kind of comes into something that we've been talking about in Bold New Democracy for a while, in that when you were in communist Poland and you were living in a make-believe world, that is the way that authoritarian governments control their people. And what we see in democracies is democracies where people are active citizens and take part in the process, is those tactics don't work. And what I'm scared of right now is I see so many Americans that are living in a make-believe world, and that are buying authoritarian propaganda and are behaving in the same way, and have essentially, in my mind, renounced their citizenship in a government of, by, and for the people. And it terrifies me to see this happening in our multiracial, pluralistic, democratic society that we all dream of. And you've seen it firsthand. So
Exactly, Matt. That is exactly what I have been thinking too, and something that has been worrying me very much. Exactly right.
Yeah, and the thing is, you know, as you pointed out, when you live in a society like that, you are any chance to have a choice is removed from your power. And you know, in places like Poland, it was at, you know, the result of World War II and being invaded by the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany. In America, we're doing it to ourselves. And we have come to a place in our society where a lot of people look at politics as a spectator sport and not as a participatory action and part of citizenship. And, you know, that seems like that's really asking for trouble. So,
If only people learned from history.
if only.
Well, in thinking about the rest of the questions that we had before us, I came up with a few ideas about you know, we can talk about rights, but I sort of want to talk about responsibilities and who is serving how for our government. And so I thought through the ideas that the two other kinds of responsibilities that were mentioned in at least one of the naturalization ceremonies are the responsibility to vote and the responsibility for jury duty, which lots of people in our society have been avoiding for a long time, and therefore not learning the way that our legal system functions or doesn't function in some cases. But the other thing that came to mind is that serving in office is a service to our country and a responsibility for at least some people to fill all these positions. And I think at least Democrats are being, well, probably both parties are being encouraged to take up elected office. But there's also civil service in a lot of different ways. The US Postal Service, which we've seen recently, has been attacked and reduced. Civil engineers who work on the infrastructure of our country, money has been withheld from those functions of government. But I know lots of people that have served in these things. The Foreign Service, a young woman who left my neighborhood, got her law degree, that was serving in the Foreign Service in South Africa, the diplomatic service. And then we come to things that people don't think of as government jobs necessarily, but public education, which is also being attacked, and public health. So I think it kind of behooves us to look at these responsibilities, and hopefully in Bold New Democracy, we can start supporting all of these government entities and talking about them in ways that would lift them up instead of tearing them down.
I think one of the greatest disservices that the conservative movement has done to this country was to separate normal everyday people from the government and make the government into something that was bad and dangerous and out to get you. Whereas in a democracy, fundamentally, we are the government. You know, we the people, government of the people, by the people, for the people. And that's, in my mind, when you talk about responsibilities, that is the most basic responsibility of citizenship, is recognizing that fact, which, you know, in authoritarian countries you don't have, and acting to keep it, you know, to maintain that right and responsibility of basic democratic activity on our own individual parts. Because when you give that up, willingly or not, it is the first and biggest step down a very dangerous path. And I think, you know, as Marta said, history shows that time and again, whether it's in this country or in countless other nations in the world. And so when Reagan made his big speech and said, I'm, you know, here from the government, we're here to help, is the biggest problem I've ever heard, and whatever, that was a very telling statement on the part of conservatives, because fundamentally that's what they want. They want us to be subjects and not citizens. And so they cut public education, and they cut public health and civil engineering and the civil service and the foreign service, and all these ways that we can take part in the life of our nation, and we become spectators of our politics and not participants in it. And when that happens, that allows them to gain more and more power, and us to lose more and more power. So that's what I see going on in the last 40 or so years in our nation. It's happened before here, as Karen alluded to in her opening statement. And I think as happened in the 60s and 70s, the only way that we are going to be able to get out of this moment is if people like us recognize our rights and responsibilities and stand up for them.
And the most important aspect is we change ourselves, and then we talk to our neighbors, and we talk to our friends, and we talk to our families, so that all of us together as a group can realize what our responsibilities of citizenship mean. And I think that by changing our inner attitudes and looking, like you said, Matt, looking at the bigger picture of what we can accomplish is a group of people is really important. And it's a revolutionary change. We have to, there's a need for a social change now to get people out of being just thinking that their rights are going to be guaranteed forever because they've always been. And we know that's not true. We know that we can lose our rights if we don't choose how we're going to interact with each other and the government and the Constitution.
So Bold New Democracy is working on participatory democracy, and anybody and everybody can pick up a piece and then, like Karen said, say, this is what I'm doing and this is why.